It is week 2 out at Trojan camp at USC. We got Matt Lowry on the line from Conquest Chronicles. It is the USC platform on SB Nation. Matt, how you doing today?
Doing pretty good, Mark. How you doing?
I'm doing just fine, locking things down on spring practice as just about everybody across the nation is on the field. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, of course, breaking down college football unlike anybody else. And we're talking USC coming off 5-7. Therefore, recruiting is crucial. Not a whole lot of activity right now, Matt, but a camp a couple weeks ago and a little recruiting amongst players and a key player.
Yeah. So as everyone knows, Adidas hosts a 7-on-7 passing down tournament every year, and they were at El Camino College in Southern California. And Bryce Young, modern day quarterback and USC commit, was actually talking to some top receivers, probably trying to lure them to USC. So he's actively out there recruiting for the Trojans, trying to bring a lot of these top guys to USC. So right now, you have one of the top quarterbacks, if not the top quarterback in the 2020 class, trying to bring a lot of guys, a lot of receivers, a lot of offensive guys to USC, and to join him there in the 2020 recruiting class.
And Matt, as you well know, USC, ever since recruiting rankings started to be compiled in the early 2000s, has lived in the top 10 and even in the top 5. Their average ranking for a recruiting class is one of the top 5 or 6 in the nation, but fell off last year, of course. And they struggled to complete a top 20 class. Did bring in a decent class with some very outstanding players, but not the level of elite players at the quantity that they're used to. So they could use the help. And of course, Bryce Young is one of the top players in the recruiting class, and so if he can bring some guys along, then it just brings and builds the momentum, and the good word gets passed along, and it becomes something that we've seen in the past where players have fed upon players' decisions, and it's really worked for certain programs. Got Matt Lowry on the line from Conquest Chronicles talking some USC football. The Trojans are in camp for their second week. And the quarterback battle that I didn't necessarily look at as a battle as I review across the country, and we're going to be presenting quarterback battles across the nation. But JT Daniels possibly being pushed here by a couple, in particular, Jack Sears.
Yeah. So Jack Sears has been looking pretty good in camp. All the quarterbacks really, they've been looking impressive, but Jack Sears is one who stood out. I think it has a lot to do the with the simplicity of the offense now. Graham Harrell, he already installed his offense. A lot of the players joked about how that was it. They thought there would be more to it, but I think with USC keeping it simple, with Graham Harrell keeping it simple, it's giving a lot of the quarterbacks chances, and it's giving Jack Sears, somebody who many USC fans thought that he should have started midway through the season. He's right now pushing JT Daniels, but one name in particular that a lot of people did not expect is Keldon Slovis, the current freshman who enrolled early from the 2019 recruiting class. He's been looking very impressive through the first week of camp, although the second week of camp he's missed it due to an undisclosed injury. He hasn't really dressed out. He's been at practice but hasn't dressed out. We know that there's been some type of illness going around campus, so I don't know if he's been sick or if he's been injured in particular. But Keldon Slovis has been impressing a lot of coaches, but right now it appears the job is JT Daniels unless he somehow really loses it. But Daniels and Slovis, they're giving him a run for his money right now.
Sears received his one opportunity last year against Arizona State. The team lost, but a close game against not one of the best defenses in the Pac-12, but not one of the worst defenses in the Pac-12. And probably based on the elite speed that they had across the front seven, Arizona State had one of the best pass rushes in the conference, if not the country. They ranked very high in sacks, and Jack Sears turned in a nice 20 for 28 effort with 235 yards, a couple touchdowns, no interceptions. Again, in a close loss, his one opportunity. You would think that he would develop and build off of that one effort. JT Daniels, 14 TDs, 10 picks, 59% completion percentage, took a lot of sacks, offensive line issues, him holding on to the ball. We'll see if he's better coming up this year. He obviously the guy with the highest ceiling, although Jack Sears was very, very well touted coming out of high school. We got Matt Lowry on the line from Conquest Chronicles talking USC football for us. Second week of camp for the Trojans. On the defensive line side, Trevor Trout's out. Can you give us some thoughts on Trevor Trout? Highly regarded four-star guy out of St. Louis. And also we're hearing good things from Drake Jackson, highly thought of as a freshman.
Yeah, so with Trevor Trout, he sustained a torn bicep over the weekend and recently just had surgery to repair that. So he is out for the remainder of the spring. USC could use depth on the defensive line. They could use whatever help, especially after last season. But right now, Trout is apparently he'll miss the remainder of spring. His timeline's unknown on when he'll return. We're looking at maybe fall camp, maybe around that time. So we're looking at potentially fall camp when he'll return, somewhere around that timeline. But Drake Jackson, the freshman who you just mentioned, he's been getting a lot of praise, and a lot of coaches have been comparing him to Leonard Williams or Rasheem Green. So they're saying he brings that type of versatility to the Trojan defensive line where he can play either defensive end or defensive tackle. You know, you can move him to the outside or the inside, but he has that type of quickness and he can provide that type of ability for the Trojans. But something that you haven't really been hearing, and that's the Trojans are starting to add pounds to that line. And what we mean by that is Coach Chad K, he's been preaching to the defensive linemen, hey, you guys need to put on a few pounds. Um, we've been seeing a few of these guys, they've put on maybe 2-3 pounds, and it's making a difference on the defensive line to where now they're starting to break through and to make stops in the backfield, something that USC desperately needed. But they're talking about adding more pounds, adding more weight, more muscle to the defensive line, something that we haven't really heard about in the past couple of years. And it's something that's been really effective for the Trojans defensive line in camp so far.
We're breaking down position battles at USC with Matt Lowry from Conquest Chronicles. Please join him and the rest of the staff there at SB Nation to talk USC football with the Trojans in their second week of camp. This, of course, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Let's look at the linebackers. And, of course, Cam Smith taking 81 tackles with him to the NFL, and a number of players not in play there. But they do bring back experience at linebacker. And as that possibly changes the defensive backfield, kind of set the stage for us in regards to some of the news we'll hear the rest of spring and how it projects toward the fall.
Yeah, so right now at linebacker, there's been a lot of shifting around going on, and I think what they're trying to do is find ways to get the most out of guys. One name in particular is Christian Rector. As a lot of people know, he was at defensive end on the defensive line for the Trojans the last 2 years. Well, now they moved him to the Predator linebacker position, which was Porter Gustin's position. And I know a lot of people thought Hunter Echols or somebody like that would take that position, but they moved Christian Rector to that position probably to get more out of him, maybe to get him to get more explosiveness out of him to improve the pass rush. So he's moved there. They also slid John Houston over to the will linebacker, which was Cam Smith's position. And then they moved freshman or now sophomore Pelote Gaoteote over to the inside linebacker, which was John Houston's spot. But Gaoteote has been really impressive in practice. Matter of fact, during yesterday's practice or on Wednesday's practice, he had a big hit on a walk-on running back, which was probably one of the biggest hits of the spring. So he's been looking really impressive. John Houston's been looking impressive. And again, you have the outside linebacking spot, which is down to Malik Abdul McClain or or Hunter Echols, who they've also slid over, or Elijah Winston. So they have talent at the outside linebacker spot. They're three deep in that position. So you're going to see a lot of rotations between guys at the outside in the predator linebacking position.
Yeah, as you mentioned, Matt, Cam Smith has obviously been the guy ever since he picked off 3 passes against USC when they were ranked in the top 5 in the nation, or against Utah at the Coliseum, and took one back for a touchdown. Not that that was his only game of his career. Obviously, he's at the NFL Combine and going to set himself up well for a paycheck in the NFL. So he's been a really good linebacker and solid linebacker, but that's what put him on the national map and gained him Freshman of the Year status as a Pac-12 defender. And then people knew about him after that. And again, he led the team in tackles last year. But they bring back, as you mentioned, a lot of production here. Kristen Rector had 9 tackles for loss and 4.5 sacks. Porter Gustin, of course, he moves on. But John Houston, 67 tackles, him only second to Cam Smith in total tackles, and Gaya Teate, as you mentioned, with 38 tackles and 4.5 tackles for loss. So a lot of production there back at linebacker, though they missed their star coming back from last season. We got to Matt Lowry on the line talking USC football, as the Trojans obviously fill up the NFL rosters as well as anybody historically, but a little bit thin this season, Matt. Cam Smith, of course, Chuma Edoga, a guy that we've seen play. Biggie Marshall, we've talked about for a long time because he came into college with a lot of hype and the blue chip status. And Porter Gustin, a very productive player at the collegiate level with 10 tackles for loss last year and 7.5 sacks. Your thoughts about how USC showed up at the Combine and how they project to the next level?
Well, I think USC they actually came out pretty good at the Combine. A lot of these guys, based off of the 5-7 season, it kind of hurt their stock. But as you saw during the Senior Bowl, during the Combine, USC the USC players have actually been impressive. Iman Marshall's been getting. You've been hearing his name float around, potentially going in that 5th, 6th round area. Though they've talked about potentially moving him to safety, which has been the talk for, I want to say, a few years. Even at USC, there's been talk about him moving to safety. One name that has really caught on, well, 2 names actually that's really caught on, was Chuma Edoga and Porter Gustin. Porter Gustin that hasn't had a chance to really showcase what he could do because he's been hit with numerous amount of injuries. Though a lot of NFL teams love how he looks and the explosiveness that he's showing despite the ankle surgeries, the foot injuries. He's been showing a lot of explosiveness off the ball. So they're talking about him going in that 4th to 5th round area. Chuma Edoga again was the talk of the Senior Bowl. Also looked impressive during his pro day and during the NFL Combine. His stock is starting to go up, and also with Cam Smith, smart football player, high IQ. But the knock on him, honestly, is his blitz timing. And what I mean by that is the timing of his blitz is kind of off, and when he does get sent on the blitz, he gets swallowed up by the offensive line, which is something you don't want from your inside linebacker. But I think he could end up being drafted somewhere around the 5th, 6th round as well, maybe 6th round. A team's gonna love his IQ. He and I think he'll make an NFL roster somewhere. He'll make an NFL roster somewhere. Someone will love what Cam Smith brings to the table.
And that was definitely the case with Cam Smith, as you mentioned, Matt. And it's interesting to note because otherwise, the high IQ, as you note, you would think that that would filter down to his blitz pickup in regards or his timing of the blitz and being able to read that better because he did everything else well from a read standpoint, technique standpoint, sure tackler, made the most of his physical abilities elsewhere as a linebacker in terms of his skill set, except for that in particular. He only runs like a 4.69. I think that was, which is decent. It's not awful at the NFL Combine. So he improved himself there. I think he lost some weight his senior season, wanted to improve his speed and versatility from sideline to sideline without compromising the hitting ability. Adoga, from what I see in looking through some draft analysis, yeah, as you mentioned, huge week for him at the Senior Bowl. And then he also being tied in particular to the Cincinnati Bengals because of their issues at that position. So interesting to see USC showing up, of course, at the NFL draft as they always do, despite 5-7 in 2018. Matt, let's get away from the personnel for a second. We've really looked at the nuts and bolts in terms of the vibe, your own and the fan base coming off 5-7. Is it a situation where you can't wait to get at Fresno State and get after it and see if this team can turn it around? Or you're like, well, I really don't have a whole lot of hope for huge improvement to get back to USC type of standards?
Well, in my honest opinion, and just based off of what I've been seeing and hearing with the vibe at practice, you could tell a lot of these guys are frustrated about 5-7, and they're frustrated on how they're being doubted. And right now, the talk around is just, we're not going to talk about it. We're going to show you when we hit the field against Fresno State. And to me, I think USC will vastly improve from 5-7. I don't think that you'll see a 5-7 season again, but I'm more of the I want to wait and see as well. And I think a lot of fans are in that same boat because we've been hearing it. We've heard it for so many times that this team's going to be better. This team's going to be better every year. And I think with the exception of maybe the Pac-12 title year and the Rose Bowl year, really there hasn't been much merit to what a lot of coaches have said. But I think this is different because now you're starting to sense an excitement with the offense of what Graham Harrell can bring. People are still kind of about the defense. They're trying to figure out what's going to happen about the defense. But I think there's some optimism here within the fan base and within the team, especially myself. I think, and I'll make this bold claim, I think the USC offense will be exciting to watch. I think I think the offense will finally be an exciting offense to watch. Like, you got to see what the USC offense does. They're going to put points up. I think they're going to move the ball. They'll put points up. I just want to see how the defense is able to hold teams, because if they can do what they did last year, which was force 3-and-outs and get the opposing offense off the field, I think now you finally have an offense that can put points on the board, and I think that will be the big improvement. And I think USC off of that can contend in the Pac-12 South again. Utah's bringing back quite a few decent guys. They won the Pac-12 South. Colorado has a new coach, and I think they're returning quite a few guys. So it's not gonna be easy. It's still gonna be challenging to win that Pac-12 South, but I think USC will put themselves in a position to where they'll either win the games that they lost last year, or they'll at least make a step forward. They'll improve somehow, but it's going to be a lot of excitement with this offense. I think it'll make a huge difference.
And when you mention some of the issues up front on the defensive line, I think the next wave of players have a ton of potential. I think their strongest players and their most talented players are this wave coming in on the defensive front, but they are a bit thin in terms of depth. and a bit undersized, and they got a lot of hard-running teams coming at them. Stanford, Utah, Notre Dame always loves to run the football. Washington, of course, added to the schedule after they missed them last year. And as you know, the schedule is very front-loaded, so they're going to have to be ready out of the gate against Fresno State. The first 6 games are pretty brutal. Then they catch a bit of a break late in the season. So if they can weather the storm, maybe go 4-2 the first 6, 3-3, then they're probably in pretty good shape as they could feast on the back half of the schedule when their young team should be better in October and November. All right, Matt, we appreciate you stopping by. We want to let everyone know that you can find us in 2 spots if you're looking for Pac-12 and USC football. Of course, at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, where we cover the map, everybody in the Power 5 and the Group of 5 as well. And then over at our partnership with SG1 Sports. So it's USC football, it's Pac-12 football, SG1 Sports, Mark Rogers TV. Catch us there as well. Matt, we appreciate you stopping by.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
All right, sir.